Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about whether you invest in a residential property or a commercial investment property. It's a question that comes up a million times to me. There's so many friends who ask, and I thought, why wouldn't we delve into this today? This is absolutely the perfect question for people who want to know which one's better. And I've prepared a little bit of data for you, but let me just tell you a little bit about my first experience buying a residential property. It was 2004. And I had been looking for different condominiums in DC. I was so excited. I didn't know what I know now, but I bought a lovely, just the cutest 1940s condo, a studio in DuPont Circle. And I owned it for several years and I renovated every inch of it but one closet. And my friends also bought several properties around the area, and they started to get, when they sold, a higher price than I did. And I just didn't understand why. So my price kept going in at about 210, 220. I'd spent about 200,000 on it. And they were coming out at 250, 275, 300. And it took me longer to get that price, many years more. And I didn't understand why. It took a while to understand that in a residential property, market conditions make a difference, meaning other condos around you could impact, of the same quality, could impact the price of my property. I just didn't know that. And the more I got into this, I started to understand that market conditions on an individual property, whether it was a house, condo, or townhouse, would make a difference. But if you're in commercial, it is less so. So why are there differences? What does that mean for you? Let me share with you. Now, give me a sec. Here we go. Residential versus commercial property. When you have a residential property, it's 1 to 4 units. And that means it could be a condo, a townhouse, a house. And if it's a multifamily, it's 4 units or less. So an apartment building that has 4 apartments or less, you own it individually. So that means that you are in control. You're choosing that roof or that HVAC or the design element. That's all on you. And it's almost always a recourse loan. And recourse loan means that you're responsible for it. It goes against your credit. So you qualify for it, but you're also held responsible for it. And something to note. You want to know that the market conditions do impact a residential property. So if the market is stagnating, your property is going to slow down in value. That value is just, it's what's so. And if the market's on fire, the horses are out, then your property stands to benefit from that. It is market dependent, and you need to keep your eye on the market for that. You also have tax benefits, but you have limited tax benefits, and you have to be careful about that, and you want to talk to your accountant about it. But there are definitely benefits of owning an investment property that's residential. Commercial property, that is 5 or more units. And it's a larger team. It's usually, I'm talking about syndication here. It's usually a larger team where you have a management team and an investment team. The loan is different. It's a non-recourse loan. And let me tell you, that means that you're not responsible for it. It doesn't show up on your credit score. It doesn't mean that the management team's not responsible for it. They are, but it doesn't show up when you run a credit report. It's a different animal. And it allows you to buy larger scale properties. It's less dependent on market conditions. And why? It's because when you own a commercial property, the whole job of the commercial property is to increase the pie, meaning your goal is to increase your net operating income or your revenues and decrease expenses. Your price is dependent on that. You definitely want to look at comparable sales. It has some impact. But if you're running a beautiful operating property and it's just doing so well, that's going to impact your price. You're going to get a higher price than your competitors who may not be doing so well. You also want to know the tax benefits. There are huge tax benefits of owning a commercial property. They show up in depreciation. They show up in your taxes. They show up in your dividends and your returns, which you're not taxed on. So there's a huge amount of rules and regulations that actually benefit you when you invest in a commercial property. And you want to know about those when you go in. You want to ask that team because you don't want to miss out. You want to understand, and you want to make sure your team understands that too. Now, note that when you're in a commercial property, you're part of a group. It's a larger group, so there's going to be more of that democratic voting, that you're giving up some creative control. They're going to be choosing things often on the value, because there's so many more elements, many people living in those units. And you want to make sure that you're comfortable with that. So that's some of the differences between commercial property and residential property. And you want to understand that when you get into it. Now, if you want to learn any more about this, feel free to give me, a shout out, a DM, either on pineapplepam.com or ideally at Syndication Sisters on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. I want to help you out on that first property. Take care.